Hey guys, what's up? My name is Gabe and this is Games with Gabe. In today's tutorial, what I'm going to be doing is something a little bit different. This is something called natural language understanding. If you haven't heard of it, I'm going to go over a brief overview of what it is and sort of just the concept behind it before we actually delve into using this library, Rasa NLU, and actually learning how to use it. But essentially, what we're going to be doing is guessing what users want to do based on some text input that they give us, and then figuring out what their intent is and choosing an appropriate response. So essentially what we're going to be making is a chatbot. I'm going to take you through Rasa NLU's first tutorial basically and just sort of explain everything that they're explaining, and then I'm going to go a little bit further and show a couple extra steps, and we're going to modify their first tutorial a little bit and add a whole new intent and capability to our little chatbot AI so that it can suggest us some movies when a user asks for any good movies. So that's what we will be doing in today's tutorial. Let's look at how it works behind the scenes first before we actually go and try and code it. Alright, so what is natural language understanding? Well, when most people hear natural language understanding, what they think of is something like Google or Alexa, where you have somebody speak and say something. This is called an utterance, and then this utterance goes and they use some sort of AI to change that speech to text, so then you get a sentence that looks like something somebody said, "Do you know of any good movies?" And then what the AI then does is it uses another library to break up this sentence into its parts of speech and remove any unnecessary words like of and do and any, which can be useful, but for the most part, most people will not be using. And then it breaks up into the most important components, which are things like the nouns, the verbs, and the adjectives, and then it uses another machine learning model to identify what the intent of that user was by matching it up against some training data, and then in this case it identifies an intent, find a movie. This is in essence what natural language understanding is. In our case, we're going to take out this component. We are not going to do any speech to text yet, and then what we're going to do is, for this breaking up of everything, we're actually going to be using not Spacey, that's one Python library, but we're going to be using Keras, which is another machine learning library that will be working behind the scenes. We won't have to worry about any of this part. This is all done internally by the library that we will end up using, which basically matches this against a bunch of training data. We will be using Rasa NLU, which uses this. You can configure it to use different libraries like Spacey, which is another Python library to do things like this, where you break up the speech into different parts of the speech and everything. But instead, what we're going to be doing is just be using the Rasa NLU, which does all that stuff for us, and we can just focus on giving it training data and coming up with a intent and system to respond to user input and everything. And so basically what that means is machine learning models, the way they work on the inside is they transform all that data into a set of matrices, which are just a bunch of numbers. So you have one big matrix. This is your input data, which you multiply against another matrix. This is your weights, and then you have another, possibly, sometimes people will leave this out, this is your biases. So you have your input, you have your weights, your biases, and this gives you your output data. And then what it does is this output data, in our case, is going to be a bunch of different intents. So it could be stuff like find a movie, find movie, or it could be something like greet or greet angry. And you could just have a bunch of different intents. And then what the AI is going to do is it's going to assign a weight to each of these. It's going to say, oh, I think this is 0.9%. So that means 90% probability they're doing this. This is like a 0.05, and this is like a 0.15. And these will all sum up to 1, which means we'll have 100% in here, but it will choose the best response. And then you can set a threshold where if it's below like 0.8, that's not confident enough for you. So if it's below 0.8, you have a fallback method, and it will just go to some fallback mechanism no matter what if it's not confident enough. And so in that case, normally what you would do is, if it's just not recognizing a phrase that you would like it to recognize, you would add in more training data. And what the machine learning model does is it uses all the training data to help it come up with these weights and these biases. And then it uses the training data to confirm that it is guessing accurately by matching up randomized data. It'll use half of the training data to come up with to train it, and then half of the data to verify that it's working. So you want to ensure you have enough training data is what I'm trying to explain here. And we're going to see what all this actually looks like in practicality once we start looking at the Rasa NLU library. So without further ado, let's look at that library and see how we can use it to our advantage in this case and build a simple chatbot. The very first thing that we're going to want to do is you're going to want to create a folder that will contain all this. I'm just in my Python scripts folder. I'm going to say Control-Shift-N to create a new folder in here. And then I'm going to call this Rasa NLU movies, because that's basically what we're going to be doing. Then you're going to want to go into here. This is where everything is going to be happening. So then in Visual Studio Code, I'm going to go in and open up Rasa NLU movies, hit select folder, and then we're going to open up a new terminal inside of here. And to install Rasa NLU, if you have pip, what you can do is you can say pip3 install and then Rasa. And this will go through all the requirements, and I already have it installed, so it does that very quickly. It may take a little bit longer in your case. Next, what we're going to want to do is we're going to say Rasa init -- prompt. And what this is going to do is it's going to set up a basic project for us to take a look at and see how everything works. So we get a bunch of folders appearing over here on the left-hand side, and you see it's doing this training, which is the thing I was talking about. And it's actually really cool watching all this stuff too. They put a lot of work into this library, and it really shows. It's even improved in the couple years since I've last taken a look at it, or a few months, I think. But it's a really cool library. So what I want to do is take a look through all of this stuff in the left-hand side, sort of explain what all of it is. Init.py, that's just a basic Python file that makes sure that we have access to all of our other Python files and everything. Actions.py, so let's take a look inside here. It has nothing in it, but if we read up here, it says this file contains custom actions which can be used to run custom Python code. So this is basically like if you were using a web server to connect to your training model, and then you were using that to dispatch commands to this actions.py folder. So basically the way that Rasa NLU expects to be used is as a web server that you connect to, and the web server dispatches commands to some other Python file on that web server. And this is where those commands would be in. Next, what we're going to want to take a look at is config.yml. This basically sets up the configuration for your whole file. So you can say it says we're using English, and the pipeline is supervised embeddings. This is basically the catch-all for just most of the basic NLU components. You can change this pipeline to use other things. And then it also has the policy. So this is where it's saying it's using Keras, and this is like the policy for what training it's going to be using. You can also use in this config.yml, I believe there's more configurations like how long you can track history and stuff. That might be another one. Credentials.yml, so this is for things like connecting to external services. So this is where it would be running our web server basically. And then you can see that it has other web servers you can connect to. So if you want to put this on Slack, Mattermost, Socket.io, and they sort of give you little indications of what you would have to do in order to do that. You would have to set up a little bit extra too, but it's basically where you would keep all that information. We won't be worrying about this one too for now. Let's take a look inside this data folder, and then inside of nlu.md. So this is a markdown file which contains the training data. So like I said, this has quite a bit inside of it, but it all goes under some blanket intent. So this is saying, hey, these are all the intents that we want to match up to greet. And so it looks at, hey, hello, hi, good morning, all these different things. And it uses these to try and guess if somebody is trying to greet. So then you can do variations of this or different greetings, and it will try and guess and say, hey, I think it's trying to greet the person. And then they have the other intents: goodbye, affirm, deny, mood, greet, mood, unhappy, so on, so forth. Now let's take a look at domain.yml. This is where it has the global, so this is all the intents we could have. These are all the actions that our AI can take. This is all just defined inside this global domain.yml file. And then these are all the responses. And so as you can see, these responses are very rigid. You can customize these so that it's selecting from a pool of responses, selecting and varying the responses and everything, which is what you do once you get into a more advanced type stuff. Now, this also has like session expiration time, which means it will expire after 60 seconds. And carryover slots to new session means this this natural language understanding library holds history. So it holds the history of your conversations. And when it says this, it's saying, hey, carry the history of however much history I said to hold onto the next session, so that when the user logs back in, the AI has not forgotten about that stuff. And you can customize those different things inside this file as well. Endpoints.yml, so this is where you would connect to things like Facebook and everything. We won't be worrying about this once again because we are just going to be focusing on local versions of this right now. And then models/timestamp. So this file right here is your model. This is your natural language understanding model. This is what contains all the data for things like the weight, the biases, so that the AI knows what to do with everything. One more thing I wanted to mention inside of this, you can see that all the intents are this is the NLU.md, by the way, the training data. One more thing that I want to mention is that these are all very rigid, just like simple phrases and stuff. You can customize it so that it's like, hey, name, and you attach this to some name. And what this basically does is it expects some variable name here, and then it's going to match it up and give it to you in a variable called name. And you can do customizations like that and stuff. That's getting into more advanced knowledge too. And then you can also set up regexes too. So if you wanted to do like match a number, and you want to match it like just one or more numbers, then you could do that so that you can match patterns like zip codes and stuff. But we won't be worrying about that right now. Because it's just getting a little bit more advanced to what I want to do. I just want to show the basics of Rasa NLU and how it works. If you guys want me to, I can go into more depth on how to do stuff like that in future tutorials. So with all of this sort of under our belt, let's see how this all works real quick. I'm going to go and say Rasa shell, because this will actually give us a little bit of an interactive model to check out how it works and stuff. So if we do this, then it's loading the bot, and I can say, hey, and then it chooses its response, and it says, hey, how are you? And if I say I'm doing bad, it will choose the greet, affirm. And so then it sends me a picture, and I can say, yeah, that helped me, if I spelled the out right. But, and you see that it misrecognized that intent. Or it may have, it doesn't know what to do after this, so it just says bye after this. It's like, okay, it helped. And we can actually see that too if we go into the stories file, which I don't think I showed. This one is also important. So if you notice, it has these different paths, and so happy path. And it says basically the user greets, what do? You utter a greeting. If the user's mood is great, then you utter a happy greeting. Sad path 1 says, okay, the user greets, you utter a greeting. The mood is unhappy, then you utter a cheer up, and then you say, did that help? And if it's an affirmation, then you utter a happy. And then sad path 2 is greet. And so basically you're just defining like conversation paths that the AI could take depending on what sequence of events happens. So if we try this again and I say, hey, and it says, hey, how are you? And I say bad, and then it says it's going to send me a picture, and I'm going to say yes. And then it will utter great, carry on, okay? And then if I say bye, then it's just going to say goodbye. That's basically, you can hit Control-C to exit out of this too. That's what the stories file is for. We're not going to worry too much about this too. This is for if you want to stay within Rasa NLU. Definitely look into it, because I think staying within the package is great, and it will be much better than what I'm about to show you. But I do want to show you how you can expose it so that you can use it with other libraries and stuff of that nature if you want to. First things first, in order to expose it to ourselves, what we have to do is we have to go into these models, and I'm going to open up 7-zip because it's the easiest way I could extract all this stuff. So I'm going to copy this path and then paste it into here, hit enter. And we're going to go into models, and right here I'm going to hit extract, say OK. Go into here, hit extract, say OK. And then we have all of that file extracted. So all the data is finally extracted. I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to delete this as well, move this up, and I'm going to delete the .tar, and I'm going to rename this test. So if we go into here, we see this is actually what the training model looks like. It has this NLU folder with all this stuff in the metadata, and then it has the core, which is just the policies and stuff for connecting to the actual API and everything. What we're going to do is we're basically just going to expose the model and just use that to our advantage. So let's go and create a new file inside of here. I'm going to call this test.py. There's going to be a few libraries we have to import from Rasa that will help us expose this. So I'm going to say from rasa.cli.utils import print success from rasa.py. NLU.model import interpreter, and then from Rasa.NLU.utils import JSON to string. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up the path. So I'm going to say Rasa model path equals, and we know this is under models /test /NLU relative to this Python folder. It's inside here. And you want to do the file to this NLU folder because that's what this will need in order to work. So just whatever the name of your folder is. Then I'm going to say interpreter equals interpreter.load Rasa model path. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create this function. So define Rasa output text, and this is just going to say message equals whatever that text is. So we're going to cast it to a string, and then we're going to strip everything off of it, and then result is interpreter.parse message. This is basically what Rasa is doing behind the scenes, and then it does more stuff with this result. We're going to stop it here just so that we can have more control over it. I'm going to create a main function real quick and then create a simple while loop that takes user input. So I'm going to say user input in equals that, and then while the user input is not in the just a few different phrases. So like while they're not in exit, and I'm actually going to lowercase this just so that we make sure we get it. So while it's not in exit or quit or queue, we will continue to loop. And then we will say our out equals Rasa output. So we'll call that file with our user input. Then we'll print what we get just so that we can see what it's returning. And then we can say user in equals input. And we'll do the double arrows once again. And it will continue to loop until the user is done. Don't forget to call main at the bottom of the function. That's important. Next, we'll say Python test.py, and it's going to run this. You're going to see a bunch of warnings and stuff. That's okay. You can ignore those. There's a way to disable those too. But then we get to this point, I'm going to say, hey, and then what you see is this big blob of text, and it says intent, name, and it says greet. So it's saying we're doing a greeting. What's the confidence? 97%. So it says they're greeting you with a 97% confidence. Entities, this is stuff that you could capture within the greeting, like names and stuff. So that's where it would appear. Intent ranking, so then this is just the rest of the intent and what confidence it has for each of these. So as you can see, greeting has 0.97, so that's the highest, then like practically 0, and practically 0, and practically 0 for the rest of the greetings. Okay, so this basically gives us a way to see what our intents are. I'm going to hit exit, and then let's comment that out. Then I'm going to say print the result, and then I'm going to say intent and name, just so that we can see. This will just print out what the intent was. So then let's do this one more time. We'll run python test.py, and I'm going to type in hey. Make sure that's R out, not result. Okay, run this one more time, and we'll type in hey. And then it tells us it's a greet. If I type in, who are you? It says it's a bot challenge. So we get this way that we can expose this stuff. So let's modify this a little bit so that we can actually have a movie. I'm going to do the movie part first because it's a little bit easier. So we'll say utter good movie. And then this will be movies equals Dark Knight and Inception and Lord of the Rings. And you could actually have this pulling from like IMDb or something if you have some other library. We Bought a Zoo. Don't judge me on my movie choices too. These are good movies. But you could basically have these pulling from like some IMDb ratings or something and then just have it throw out whatever it wants. So I'm going to say, I think you might like. And then we're going to pull a random movie from there. So we'll say movies, random.rand range, and we're going to import that in just a second. 0 to the length of the movies. And then we're going to say plus, I liked that movie. So basically, it's just going to pull one of these random movies, insert it, and then give it to the user. Up here, let's say import random, just so that we have that library available to us when we pull one of these. And this actually might need to be -1. Not completely sure on that. But we'll go with it for now. Now we need to modify our Rasa model and retrain it. So this is something you would do regardless if you want to add new intents and everything. So first, let's go to NLU. And inside of here, I'm going to go hashtag, and then I'm going to say intent, colon. This is going to be any movies. So basically, this is the user saying, is there any good movies? And I'm going to say, they could ask any good movies. And we basically just want to give it like 4, 5, 6. The more the better, because more intents you have, better it is. And it's really great if you can get actual people to test your models just so that you can see what types of things they type in and then go based off of that. I'm looking for a movie, period. So we're going to just sort of use these 4 phrases to train it a little bit, and then we'll have a story, which we won't be using for our thing, but it's good to have. Any movies. And basically what we're going to do, or actually we're going to say this is a find a movie challenge, or story, I'm sorry. And then we'll say any movies. If the user greets any movies, then we will utter good movie. And so then we will go into our domain, which has all of our things. First of all, we want to add in any movies into here, and that should not be an equal, that should be a dash. Then we will go down here and we will utter good movie, which I believe is the syntax I used. Yep, utter good movie and any movies. And if we go to NLU, any movies. Then under responses, we will create our utter movie. So say utter good movie, and I'm just going to say text. So this is basically where you define it. A good movie is ... because we have no way to choose it in here. I mean, technically, well, this is just a YML file. So yeah, you would have to connect this to an actions folder and everything to get more variations. They do have other ways you can do it without that, which we can take a look at in a future tutorial as well. I just wanted to get the bare bones so that you know how to use this. Next thing we have to do is we have to train the model. So we say Rasa train. I'm going to give it NLU. What it's going to do is it's going to take all that new data we've given it, and then it's going to put it into the model and train it. And so you see it's going through everything again, retraining it. And the NLU at the end is just basically going to put it in something called NLU. Go into here, and then if we go up to models, we have a new training model with NLU as the prefix. Then if we say Rasa shell NLU just to make sure it works, we'll wait for this to start up real quick. Then we can say any good movies, and you'll notice that it gives us the whole thing. And so it says any movies with a 99% confidence. So we know this is working perfectly fine. Next step you need to do is, just like we did before, extract it from here using 7-zip, which I closed out for some reason. So we will go up here, we'll say extract, and I'm going to rename this to test2. Then we will go back into our test.py file, and I'm going to change this from test to test2. Then we're going to say inside of here, if the rout intent name equals any movies, then utter good move e. I spelled this wrong. There we go. And then we're going to hashtag this out too, comment out. And let's run Python test.py real quick. And it says we have an error. Oh, we forgot a plus there. I'm sorry. There we go. Run that one more time. And I'm going to say, hey, do you know of a good movie? Which, if you remember, we did not program that in explicitly, but it matches it to the movie intent. And it says, I think you might like We Bought a Zoo. I like that movie. And then I can say good movie, which we also did not put in there, but it recognizes the intent. And so this is where the real power of natural language understanding comes in. And that's why it's so important to have good training data, because if you have good training data, it can match it up down here. And then, like I said, you can change this training data so that it can take in different names. You could do was, and then like movie, a good movie. And then what it does is it starts to match this with just random words and stuff. You can pull from a database so that it's only selecting specific words, or you can pull and just from a regex pattern, and then it just says like, oh, I think they're talking about a movie there. And then you can go and use that data. So you can really customize this. It is really powerful. I would suggest you take a look at their website, because their website is really good. I will leave a link in the description to their website, to the tutorial I use. I suggest you check out the future tutorials. If you guys want me to go into more depth on another tutorial on how to do things like that, then ask me. I started building a text adventure game in this using some of those more advanced concepts, and I did it this way where I was just using predefined messages and stuff, but I would love to take a look at this more and see how to use it with an actual web server and everything, because this is just a really cool feature, a really cool library that you can use and get up and running with very quickly. So I hope you guys really try this out and see how it works further and show me what you come up with. If you guys like this, please hit like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Thanks. See you.